Hello again, everyone, family and friends. This is Hadasha Shulamite coming to you again with another story, another Bible story. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe these videos. Okay, let's get into it. But first, let me wish everyone who celebrated yesterday, uh, the Love Day, the Valentine's Day. Those of you who, whatever you did, I hope you enjoyed the day. Every day is Valentine's Day. When you think about it, we share love to all our loved ones, our children, friends, and family, and most of all, our love for God. The greatest Valentine, if you want to put it that way, there is. Today, I'm going to talk about anointed but tormented. Now, that doesn't seem to make sense, coincide. How could you be anointed and tormented at the same time? This story is about a king who, from all intents and purposes, at first, he was doing right. He was doing great. Now, to begin the story about this king, this famous king, the very first king in Israel, his name was Saul. Now the children of Israel, they wanted a king. Prior to that, God had given them the prophets and the priests and the judges, and that's how their lives were ordered, were organized, and it was fine. But they saw that the Amalekites and Jebusites and all these other people, they had kings. And the Amorites, and they had kings, and they wanted to have a king. And they kept going on. They want a king, they want a king. And God told Samuel, said, go ahead, anoint them a king. Now there was a man of the tribe of Benjamin, his name was Kish, who was the father of Saul. And they said Saul, he had this look. He was tall. When he stood up, everybody else was like below his shoulder. And he was handsome. The Bible didn't say handsome, but he was goodly, which means that he looked good. And I guess when they saw him right away at the appropriate time, they said, God save the king. Oh, they were so happy. But God has a reason for things. And there are times when, I'm like, why, God? Why don't you do it this way or do it that way? But I'm thinking with a human mind. And the differences between our mind, our thinking, and God, it's so vast. It's like from trying to find the east to get to the end of the west. It's really different. And so he had a good reason why he wanted them to have leadership by the prophet, by the priest and the judges, and they had an order. Now these people were led by God, by the Spirit of God. The prophet received word from the king, from Jesus, from God, the King of Kings, and then the priest, and and it went down that path, that realm. And so after they insisted, like I said, that they wanted a king, God told Samuel, okay, go ahead and anoint this young man, Saul. And so Saul was anointed. Now the story is a lot to this story, but my main purpose of this story is for us to get into our heads that God doesn't see things, put it this way, we cannot see things God's way. His way is the best way. And I'm the first to agree that 99.9% of the time, I cannot figure out how God is doing things. But there's a song that says, it's so sweet to trust him and to take him at his word, because his promises are sure. And when he's leading, you just know that it's going to be all right. But the point for us to get to is to trust him, because we want to see it. I want to know, like last year, what's going to happen tomorrow. But it doesn't work that way. So it's a process. As believers, every day that we live, we seek, we strive to grow, to trust him. How do we trust him? We trust him because when we look back last year and the year before that and 10 years ago and 15 years ago, when we were going through certain things, he came through for us. And that's the proof that we have. If we didn't have any problems, how would we know that God could solve them? So he allows us sometimes to go through things so that we would learn to trust him. And I'm learning and I'm praying to get to the place where I can close my eyes and not be concerned. And I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you, I'm not there yet. But let us trust God. Going back to the story. So the reason, what happened with Saul was, he was doing great. If you read the story from 1 Samuel chapter 9, you can start from chapter 8, where, God shows him. God told Samuel, okay, they want a king. Anoint this young man, Saul. And when I was reading the story, I was like, okay, he's doing good. But then there was this, like I said, there was an order of how things had to be done, like numbering the children of Israel and different things. They had a process. God had things in order, and he still do. And that is what we need to find out through his word and to follow his directions. So what happened was God had told Saul to go and destroy this nation. It was a heathen nation. There's another thing, we don't understand. But the Bible says he is creator. He can create and he can destroy. So it's not for us to say, well, why you do this or how you do that. You can say it, but that does not change who God is. He is God. He is creator. And he has the right to say, to do whatever. But he is good. He's a good God. And we may not understand so many things. So many things I do not understand, but I know who holds the future. And I pray that he holds my hand. Okay? So what happened with Saul is that he disobeyed God. God had told him to go and destroy this nation. Everybody, everything. Get rid of sin. Because God, if there is sin let's put it this way. I have a glass of water. Nice fresh glass of water. All it needs in that water is a few drops of cyanide to do the damage. It doesn't have to be half water and half cyanide. It's contaminated. It's dangerous. So what God has done, this is my analogy of the whole thing, that to purify, he gets rid of everything like he did with Sodom and Gomorrah. He saved those who were righteous, which was Lot, his 2 daughters, and his wife. Unfortunately, his wife did not make it out of Sodom because she looked back. So this is what happened with Saul. He did not obey God. After the whole thing was done, God spoke to Samuel and said, Saul did not obey me. And so Samuel went to him, and God told Samuel, that's it. I am taking the kingdom from him. It's over, pretty much, in modern language. And so Samuel went to confront Saul, and Saul said, oh, the people said that, we should take some of the cattle and, take the riches and so on, and, take it to the house of God, and we can use the good cattle that they took, like the good sheep and the goats and the cows or whatever, and we can use that to sacrifice. But God didn't say that God did not ask for that. And when Samuel approached him, he said, what is that I hear? I hear the bleating of cattle. And then he said, this is what the people wanted. And Samuel was like, what did God say? And said, the kingdom is rent from you. And Samuel told him, God said it's over. And as Samuel walked away, Saul grabbed the hold of his mantle. I guess it was, I'm not sure what it was. It was kind of a robe that they wore, and it tore. And he said, that's a sign The kingdom is rent from you and it's going to be given to another. So my point today, friends and family, is even when we do not understand God, we do not understand why he wants us to do this or why he doesn't want us to do that. Because he is creator, because he is King of kings and Lord of lords, he knows why. He knows how to protect us. He knows the beginning from the end. He doesn't have to guess. We think, we believe, we maybe, but God knows. That's the difference. We are maybe and might and perhaps, but he knows. And so because he knows everything, then we trust him. We should trust him because he is faithful. And if whatever he says, you can take it to the bank, so to speak. Okay? So Saul lost his kingdom, and because he disobeyed. And there is another part of the story that maybe I'll tell it one day. But the bottom line is that Saul lost his kingship, so to speak, because he disobeyed God. God gave him strict order. And it wasn't the first time that, he kind of slip and slide a little bit. But this time, God had a purpose for telling him to do what he was supposed to do, and he didn't do it. And like I said, God knows the beginning from the end. And God's priority has always been his children. And there are times when we may believe and look at things, I'm like, what is this? I mean, Lord knows I've been there. And I know most of you listening have been there sometime or the other, where we couldn't understand why is it that this is happening or why this is not happening. But let us trust God and know that he does things well. Eventually, because of his disobedience, he became possessed with a spirit. And that's where the torment happened. He was possessed with a spirit. And so one of his servants said, why don't you get someone who can play the harp so that when the spirit come on you, it will calm you down. And another one said, oh, I know this young man. His name is a young man. He's very good with the harp and he's very smart. He's a strong guy. And, give him all of this information. It turned out to be King David. Well, he wasn't king at the time, but eventually God anointed him to be king. But like I said, the focus on this story is to trust and obey God. And this message is for me and for you and everyone, because God is God. He alone is God. And if we want to live, if we want to prosper, and I'm not talking about wealth, which is fine, I'd welcome that, but spiritually, we want to be strong and courageous and trusting in God. Let us obey him, because he is God, and what he does everything well. God bless you. Read God's word. The word is truth and the word is life. There is life in this word. Because why? Read it, pray, because Jesus is coming and he's coming soon. Be blessed.